Hello everyone, bringing you a video today looking at this. Now this is a British issue DPM Parka. These were introduced in the very late 1970s, around 1979, and became quite iconic through their use during the Falklands War. Of course they were issued more generally as well, but they're quite well remembered, particularly photographs of the Guards, Scots Guards after the Battle of Tumbledown. Several of the men in some of the famous photographs taken at that time are wearing these parkas, and they were generally issued to 5th Infantry Brigade. There is something of a split between the two brigades, 3 Commando Brigade and 5th Infantry Brigade, regarding the kit issued. Obviously we've talked about that a little bit already in the video looking at the reversible combat smock and trousers. What we're going to look at in this video is this parka. There is a detachable liner in this, which we're going to look at separately as well. Obviously turn this inside out and have a look at the various features, the design and so forth, as we normally do. And as we normally do, we'll start at the top here. You can see we have a hood here, and this is lined. This has a fixed lining in it. So you have a nylon liner there with the insulation, so a blanket lining, padded lining there, similar to the cold weather liners made for the combat suit. And as we'll see, similar to the liner made for the parka as well. This has a cowl with a wire which allows it to be shaped to obviously give some wind protection for the face, and you can see that there. This still has its original wiring, which is quite nice. These often break. It's just a piece of copper wire stitched into a channel around the outside of the hood cowl here, which allows it to be pulled forward and to form some protection around the face. That's lined, as you can see there. We have down the front here a weather flap which closes with touch and close fasteners, or Velcro to give it its trade name, and this conceals a heavy duty plastic zip. If we look at the bottom here, it can be zipped up and open from the bottom or zipped down from the top, so there are 2 zips there, as you can see. The zips themselves are made of metal, the actual teeth of the zip are made of plastic, so heavy duty plastic zip there under this weather flap with touch and close fastenings. You have large breast pockets here, but these are just flat patch pockets. They're not bellowed at all. They don't have bellows. You can see we have large plastic buttons there, the single point of closure at the center there. You can see here that the top of the pocket does extend upward and fold over with the flap to give some weather protection there. That's the intention of that part of the design. Otherwise very similar to the buttons which were used on the preceding middle parka, which was part of the Korean War combat uniform. The combat uniform introduced for use in the Korean War. They're just now made in dark green, as they had been on the later middle parkas. So larger buttons throughout on this design compared to the standard combat uniform, the combat smock and so forth. The lower pockets are bellows pockets, as you can see there. You can see, and these again have that upward extension that folds over with the flap to give some weather protection. You can see at the bottom here there should be 2 buttons. One of them is unfortunately missing on this example, but there's one here, and there should be one on the other side. And these allow for a tail to be attached round, and we'll see that in more detail when we turn this inside out, of course. That's the front of the parka. We'll start turning this round now and having a look at some of the other details of this. So looking at the right hand side of the parka here, I lift the hood out of the way. Well, you can actually see some further details on the hood here. You have a draw cord which has been looped back out of the way there, which allows you to close the hood around. We'll see that when we look at the back. We have epaulette coming down on the shoulder here, again fastened with one of these big green plastic buttons on the shoulder there. And then details of the arm here, you can see elbow reinforcement there, fairly typical for British combat clothing at this time, so that feature copied across from that. And then at the cuff we have an adjustment tab here, which is a strap which passes through these loops. As you can see there, it's fixed round on the inside face of the cuff, runs through these loops, and then there's a long section of touch and close there, so this can gather the cuff in like that, as you can see. This is something again carried over from the middle parka, which had used a buckle and strap system on the cuff. This simply replaces the buckle with touch and close, so just updates the design a little bit in that regard. You can also see that the cuff is bound by tape there to give some reinforcement. You can see that there, just giving a bit of reinforcement to the end seam of the cuff there. You can see. So that's the right hand side of the parka. We'll move this round now and have a look at the back. There's not a huge amount more to see here, but if I do lift the hood up, you can see here this cord at the back, which allows the back of the hood to be gathered in, and that just runs through a stitch eyelet on each side, just runs through the back of the hood there. And as I say, this draw cord can be brought to the front, has a little fix lock slider there, which obviously allows you to lock the draw cord in place once you've adjusted it as you would like to, and that allows the hood to be drawn in. It's just looped out of the way at the back there for general wear with the hood down. There's not really a huge amount more to see on the left hand side. It's essentially a mirror image, so we'll start looking at the further details of this now, turn it inside out and have a look at the liner and so forth. We'll look at the inside of the Parka first before looking at the liner, and what we have here is a double layer of cloth over the shoulders, as you can see, reinforcement where the pockets attach. We do have a channel for a draw cord at the waist here, but that adjusts at the side, which we'll see in just a minute. And then we have touch and close or Velcro, the soft side of that stitched on here and here, and this is part of the way that the liner attaches into the Parka, and we'll see that more clearly obviously once we look at the liner itself, which we'll do once we've finished looking at the interior details of the Parka. Down at the bottom here you can see we do have a draw cord there as well, which obviously ends at the front here. It's just a piece of nylon cord there forming a draw cord around the bottom hem. Quite a long garment, this being a Parka. It is designed to be cover a good part of the upper body and the upper part of the legs, so they are quite big. They run quite long. You can see that comparing the end of the sleeve to the bottom hem of the Parka there. We'll start moving this around now and have a look at some of the other details. Looking at the right hand side of the interior here, you can see, if I hold the hood up here, you can see better the quilted lining there, the nylon lining, which is stitched in as opposed to being removable, but the hood is lined. And then you can see the double layer of cloth over the shoulders here stitched in to the top of the sleeve there. And then details of the interior of the cuff here. You can see another piece of soft touch and close or Velcro fastening here, which is how the liner attaches in at the cuff. There's just a simple Velcro tab or touch and close tab which fastens that in there, and you can see the interior detail of the tape edging the bottom of the cuff there as well. Looking at the back of the Parka here, you can see that double layer of cloth over the shoulders is loose at the back. We've got the draw cord running over the midriff here, around the waist. And at the bottom here, you can see we have the buttoned tail I mentioned before, which is obviously designed to come up between the legs and stop this riding up. It's a feature taken over from airborne clothing. And then underneath that, you can see the buttons also pass through buttonholes, a large poacher's pocket at the rear here. Now my understanding is you could roll the garment into this, but it could also be used to carry soft kit potentially. So you have a large poacher's pocket in the rear there, something carried across from the combat uniform design. Just button this back in place. Another detail to mention at the back here, or two details to mention at the back, is the piece of Velcro underneath the collar here, just underneath the hanging tab. You can see there, this is again is the soft side of Velcro or touch and close fastening to allow the liner to be attached. We also have the label here, which is a somewhat faded example, but nevertheless we'll get a close-up of this now. And you can see this reads Parka Man's Cold Weather, and then you have the NATO stock number and the sizing information under that, the manufacturer, which is a little difficult to read, and the contract number, which again is very difficult to read, but probably dates this to just after the Falklands War, and various other details on the label there as well. And just looking to the left-hand side here, if we lift the arm out of the way, you can see here how the draw cord adjusts at the side here, and it's exactly the same on the right-hand side. It just adjusts underneath well, basically where the sleeve meets the body of the Parka there is a draw cord. So you can adjust this in to your liking, tie it off, and then it remains adjusted. You don't have to bother with dealing with it round the front every time you take the garment on and off. So you've got that there, just a simple cotton cord running through the channel at the waist there. And we'll next look at the liner for the Parka. Now you'll see, comparing the internal details of the Parka, where the attachment points are on the outside of this to allow it to be secured in the Parka so it can be taken off and on as one garment. So that can be worn separately. It has its own fastenings across the chest and so forth. It could be worn separately like this, potentially. Again, it's made of nylon, quilted, so with a lining and then the stitching obviously to hold the lining in place. You have these three Velcro closures or touch and close closures down the front here, similar to those which are found on NBC clothing. So they are designed to be manipulated with gloves. You have a pull tab here, you have just a piece of cotton lace sewn on the end there, which allows you to open that up, and you can see a long strip of the soft side of the Velcro there, which these attach onto to secure it around the body, as you can see. All of the edges are edged in this nylon tape to stop them fraying, obviously, to give some reinforcement there. The seams down here are not so treated. The collar, the front edge and the cuffs are all taped in that manner. Looking at the right hand side here, we can see the sleeve coming down here. Lift this up, you can see there's ventilation mesh underneath the arm there. If we look at the cuff, you can see there is a piece of the hooked touch and close fastener there on the cuff. This obviously corresponds to the soft piece inside the cuff of the Parka, so you can actually Velcro the cuff in place once the liner is inside. You also have down on the side here a large or a long piece of the hooked Velcro, which corresponds to the piece of soft Velcro stitched around the hip area of the Parka to allow that to attach there. And given that's mounted vertically, as it were, and the other one is mounted horizontally, there's some adjustment there as to where the two sit. So it's not that difficult to fasten the liner inside the Parka. There's a bit of adjustment there, simply from the way those two pieces of touch and close or Velcro fastening are positioned. Looking at the back here, there's not a huge amount more to see. You can see the piece of hooked hook and loop fastening at the top there, or Velcro, in the collar, which allows you to attach this into the collar on the Parka as we saw before. The back of this is pretty plain, it's just one big piece of quilted nylon there, as you can see, and the other side is a mirror image, so we won't bother looking at that. This is worn the correct way out, as it were. That is to say, this is how you'd put the liner on if you were putting it on separately, and then obviously the inside face of the Parka would marry up to this with all the Velcro fastenings to attach the two together. We're now going to turn this inside out and just have a look at the inside of the liner as well. So looking at the inside of the liner here, a lot of the details are actually lost. It's very plain on the inside because obviously all the fixings for attaching this into the Parka itself are on the other side. We can see the stitching here where the fastenings attach down the front. Looking at the right hand side here, you can see how the mesh is stitched in to the seam there around the underarm there to give some ventilation. You can just see the inside of where the touch and close or Velcro fastener is stitched on at the cuff there. And then looking at the back, interestingly, there is a separate hanger for this stitched in, and this is where the label would have been, but unfortunately it's been removed on this example, so we can't have a look at any further detail there. But that's the liner for the Parka as well. So there we are. I hope you found it interesting looking at this. As I say, a very late 1970s piece of cold weather kit developed for the British Army and then issued through the 1980s, including use during the Falklands War, which is why we're looking at it right now, as obviously it's the 40th anniversary of the Falklands War, and as such, I thought it would be appropriate to take a look at this. If you have found this video interesting and you'd like to see more from the channel, please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below. And as ever, a huge thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It's greatly appreciated, as I always say. Thank you all very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down there as well. That's everything for this video, so until next time, bye for now.